Hello and welcome to Game 113, Introduction to Game Tools. My name is Matthew Marquit and I'm a full-time instructor at the University of Advancing Technology. In this video we're going to be using Autodesk's 3ds Max to model out a simple shape, in this case a trophy looking object that in a later video we're going to use as a collectible in Unity. So let's get started. Now when you guys first open up Max, it should look a little bit more like this, obviously with the exception of the models in the scene. Okay, and what you want to do is you want to select your screen, your bottom right screen, the perspective, and hit Alt-W to maximize your viewport to make it a little bit easier to see what you're doing when you're working. The other hotkey that you might want to remember is G, which is to get rid of the grid in the scene. You can just click G on and off, okay, to turn the grid on and off if you prefer. Okay, so we can kind of see right here that I have three objects set up. This is kind of an iterative view of what we're going to do in order to create this final object. Now, whenever you're modeling, you want to think about your object in its simplest form. In order to save yourself some time when you're modeling, you want to pick a primitive, in this case one of the standard primitives, that is closest to the shape that we're going to start with. In some cases there might be nothing that's really close to it, but you got to start somewhere. And in this case we're going to start with a cylinder because this shape is very close to a cylinder. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to click on the cylinder button. This is what you guys are going to start doing. Okay, is click on cylinder. All right, and we're going to create a cylinder screen. Now we're going to click and hold our mouse. We're going to let go of the mouse. Okay, and we're going to draw up this cylinder. We're going to click again and we should commit to the tool. Now if we right click, we'll get out of the cylinder mode. Okay, and we can kind of see here that we do have our two cylinders now, at least in my screen. Your screen, you should only have one cylinder. Now your cylinder might be a different color. Don't worry about the color in Max. This is very random. Okay, once again, you can actually change the colors if you go to Modify panel and click in here. Okay, and it'll open up this little palette, and so if we want to, we can change this just to be yellow, just so we know what we're working with, but this will not translate when we bring it into Unity. It's just a visual thing in Max, but once you have a color that you like, you can hit OK, and we can just use this as our base color. Okay, now this cylinder that I have already created does have the settings that I want us to use on our cylinder. We'll just make it a little bit quicker for us. If you can see right here, this cylinder, okay, has a radius of 15, a height of 35, height segments are set to 10, cap segments are 1, and sides are 18. Now the bottom two, the cap segments and the sides, are default. The top three are the ones that we want to change, which is 15, 35, and 10. So with your cylinder, you want to make sure that you go in here and you click on the radius and you type in 15, okay, 35, and then of course in height segments 10. Okay, and then you're going to have the exact same cylinder that I have over here. Now I don't need the second one anymore, so I can just delete it. So we can start modeling from here. Now what we do want, and I'm going to move this a little bit closer to this particular object, is to kind of create it in a shape that looks a little similar to this. Okay, now it doesn't need to be exact. I'm not looking for exact, but I am looking for a good understanding of the tools in Max. So if it's similar, you obviously understand the tools. Now you can make your trophy look like anything you want, but in this case we're going to stick obviously with this shape. All right, so in order to actually start editing this, okay, because right now it is set to just a cylinder, okay, we need to turn it into an editable poly. So I'm going to right click on the object, convert to, and set it to editable poly. Okay, so from this view, okay, we're going to actually go in and we're going to select our subcomponent Polygon. All right, and I'm going to actually hit the F for the front key. As you can see here, I have them kind of lined up on the side, so it's kind of blocking my view. So I'm actually going to hit L for left. If you guys hit F, it should be perfectly fine on my screen. I do have a couple of objects. So what I'm going to do, and actually if I deselect on this for a second, and you can kind of see right here, you can kind of see that we have a bottom poly, okay, that's nice and straight. Then we have another poly that's kind of bending in and another set of straight polys, okay? So what we want to do is we want to grab these set of polys and scale them in to better match what we see on this shape. So I'm going to click on this object here, go back to polygon mode, and I'm going to just make a little bit of a box selection and kind of carry it through. All right, and let go, and you'll see right here that it'll select our middle set of polygons. This is basically what we're shooting for. Now I'm going to hit P to go back in perspective to get out of my orthographic view, and I'm going to grab the scale tool here, and I'm going to scale on all three axes at once. Okay, you can see that you can actually grab two axes at a time. All right, in this case we want to actually grab all three at once, and we're going to scale it down, okay, just a little bit. All right, something like this, all right? So it's a little bit closer to what we see here. Obviously, it's not the same, but once again, I'm not worried about that. We'll talk about how we can fix this in a second. Okay, so from here, what we're actually going to do is I'm going to open up my soft select on the side here. Okay, we're going to hit the little plus to maximize the soft select tool, and we're going to click on use soft select. You're going to quickly notice that the object changes colors. Okay, this is the effect that soft select has on your model. By default, the fall off is set to 20. Okay, we can change this as needed. But for now, what I'm going to do is actually scale once again on all 3 axes at once. Okay, and you'll notice that it will actually slowly manipulate parts of the geometry that isn't just those set of polygons, okay, which shows us the real power behind a soft select. It kind of lets us slowly affect other elements of the object. Now, if I set the soft select to something, say, lower, you'll see that the colors will change, and then when I scale it in and out, it won't affect as much. Okay, but we want to leave it on its default 20. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in here and we're going to scale it down a little bit, and as you can see right there, we're suddenly getting this shape all over again. Okay, but what I want to do now is actually shut off soft select, so we're going to click the checkbox on here again, and this set of polys are looking a little too small now. Okay, they're a little bit taller on this one, so we're actually going to scale it in only one axis this time on the Z, and we're going to grab the Z and lift it up, and there you go. Now we have a little bit closer to that shape. Now, the obvious difference between these two shapes, okay, is this cup part, right? We need to kind of create a cup. So that's the next thing we need to do in this process. I'm going to minimize my soft select over here, okay? We're going to go back and click on this top poly, okay? And this poly by itself, we want to make sure that nothing else is selected, as we can see there. All right, and now we're going to click on the Inset tool. Now, we look over here where edit polygons are. We don't want to click on Inset itself. We want to click on the settings box right next to it. Okay, and you can see right here, we can actually grab this object and kind of move it around this little dialog. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in here. All right, and if we increase the amount, by default set to 1, if we increase the amount, we're actually going to get a thicker or smaller look to the edge of the cup. Now, when we bring this into Unity, we do want it to be a little exaggerated in order to see that, so we're going to make it a little thicker than maybe a cup would really be. But this, like I said, is just to kind of help us visualize it a little bit better when it's brought into Unity. Okay, so this looks about good. We're going to hit check to commit to the tool. Okay, and now we're going to go back over to our edit polygon section here, and we're going to choose extrude this time. Same thing, we're going to click on the settings instead of the word itself. Okay, and you see by default that it extrudes it up. This is obviously the opposite of what we want to do. So we're going to go over to the tool. Okay, I'm going to move it over a little bit here. We're going to go to the tool and we're going to press the arrow here and hold down our mouse and drag it down. Now, what we do want to be careful of, okay, is dragging it too far down. If we drag too far down, it will show up on the bottom of the geometry. Obviously, we don't want that. So just carry it down as far as it needs to. This is just fine. We don't have to get perfectly all the way down. Okay, and once we like it, we just hit check to commit to the tool, and then we're done. And we pretty much have this shape right here. Okay, so that was a fairly simple process that's brought us to this shape. But now, of course, we need to keep working to kind of get to this shape. So I'm going to get out of subcomponent mode right here by clicking on the polygons tool. All right, I'm going to click on this one here and delete it. Okay, because now that we don't need that, okay, I'm going to move it over here so that we can compare these two a little bit better now also. Now, obviously, our end goal is to have this part of the trophy protruding out of the edges. Okay, little handles. All right, and so in order to create the handles, we're going to have to use some of the same tools that we used over here, okay, but in a little bit of a different fashion. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm actually going to go back into polygon mode, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to hit T for top view here. Okay, now you can see in my view, okay, as far as top view is concerned, the top and the bottom is where I set the handles, okay, as opposed to left and right. The reason is if we actually look at the object here, the left and right, there is an edge that goes right down the middle. So we can't pick just one polygon. We'd actually have to pick two of them and make the handles. So we only want one. Okay, so we're going to pick the top and bottom because as you can see here, the polygons are flat when we're looking at the top and bottom. So I'm only going to pick one. I'm going to pick the bottom one. So I'm going to rotate my screen here and select just this one polygon here. Okay, if I hit T for top again, just to confirm, you can see that I grabbed just this one poly. Okay, and that's all we want. All right, now I'm going to hit P to go back in perspective mode. Okay, and this is what we're going to do with this particular object is we're going to extrude it just like we did before. Instead of in, we're going to go out with our extrusion. So we're going to click on the extrude settings, okay, It remembers the last settings, which are negative, so we're going to have to go back into the positive here. We're going to extrude it out just a little bit, and now we're going to actually hit plus instead of check. This actually applies the tool, but keeps it going again, okay? And we're going to do a series of these extrusions in order to kind of create the handle shape that we want. Now we want to bring this handle around and then down into one of these bottom polygons, okay? So this is how we're going to do it. So once we do our second extrusion here, I'm actually going to grab the rotation tool up here, which the hotkey is E, okay? And I'm going to rotate it just a little bit, okay, like such. Now if we want, kind of make it look a little nicer, we might even grab the move tool, move it down just a little bit so it starts slowly curving, okay? Now I'm going to hit the plus tool again. All right, and we're going to rotate it again. Okay, and we can move it again. We don't have to do the moving part, but the moving part will just make it look a little smoother. Okay, hit plus again. All right, and we're just going to keep doing this method, okay, until we get all the way down to the bottom. Okay. So a little bit of rotation, a little bit of movement back and forth. Okay, we want to be sure that we're rotating on the right angle. Okay, we don't want to be rotating like this or rotating on some weird angle. Okay, and also moving on the right angle so that we don't get our handles flying off one direction or the other. Okay, so I'm going to hit plus again. And now we're going to start bringing it in. Okay, we want to line it up with this bottom polygon right here. Okay, so I'm going to grab the move tool here and pull it in a little bit. Hit plus again. Rotate again. Okay, move it just a little bit, just on the y-axis. Going to hit plus again. And this time we're going to rotate it way in, like such. And we're going to move it. So now I can grab it on two axes, both on the Z and on the Y. Definitely don't want X because that's moving in and out of space here. But if we grab both of these, we can kind of line it up just a little bit better with this. Okay, something like that. All right, and we're actually going to just connect it from here. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. All right, with our polygon still selected, of course we're going to hit check to commit to our tool, but now we don't need this anymore. So we're actually going to hit delete and delete that polygon we had selected, but we're also going to delete the polygon we want to connect it to, which is going to be this one. Okay, so we're going to select that one also and also hit delete. Now we're going to move over and we're going to go into vertex mode here. Hotkey is 1. Okay, and we're actually going to weld the vertices, okay, in on themselves. And this is how we're going to do it. There's a little button down here that says target weld. We're going to select target weld. And now the way target weld works is you pick the vertex you want to move and you pick the vertex you want to weld it to or move it to. In this case, I want this one to go here, so I click it. You'll see a dotted line. Then I click the second vertex and it'll draw the line there too. Now we're still on the tool as long as we don't right click, so we can do it again. Drag it and click it on there. Rotate the camera. And then do the other two. Okay. And there you go. And we can right click to get out of the tool. And now our handle should be connected. Now we can play around with the handle. Okay. If we want to, we can make it look nicer. We can do all sorts of things. It's not super important, but let's just say we want to bring this edge in a little bit more so it's a little bit more average between the two of them. I'm going to click on edge here and double click this edge. If I double click it, it will actually grab all of the edges all the way around. And then we're just going to kind of move that in just a little bit so that we can kind of center this a little bit better maybe and pull it down just a hair. And that looks just a little bit better than it did before. Okay. Now, this is something that we can do. We don't have to do this, but it will make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, is actually chamfer the edges of this handle so a little bit more round. As I said before, it's not necessary, but it will make it look a little bit better. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm actually going to select this edge here. Okay, and we're going to hold down Control and we're going to grab a whole bunch of edges till we get to the bottom. The only two edges we don't want on the side, okay, are the ones that connect the handle to the object on both the top and on the bottom. Okay, as we can see here. We're going to actually go to the other side of the model. We're going to grab the same exact edges. Okay, as we can see there. And avoiding the ones that connect into the model both on the top and on the bottom. And now we're actually going to click on the chamfer settings box. Okay, and by default, it actually looks pretty good with the settings that we got. We don't need to play around with it. But if you want, you could always move it in or out. Obviously, if you do too little or too much, it's going to ruin the geometry. So the default's fine at 1, and we're going to hit check to commit to the tool. Now, to clean up the geometry just a little bit, because we're getting these little tries here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to vertex mode. We're going to go to target weld, and we're actually going to weld these tries into the object. Okay, now they're still three-sided polygons, okay? But they look a little bit better when we go in and weld these to the main object. So we're going to do that both on the top and the bottom. And this is why we didn't pick those last two edges, because otherwise it would be these edges that were chamfered and we'd have a weird looking polygon right here, and we kind of wanted to avoid that. All right, so this looks pretty good, obviously, with the exception of the fact that the handle's on one side. Now, we don't want to model out the handle twice, okay? That's going to actually be a waste of time. And also, it's going to be very hard to kind of make that handle look exactly the same on the other side. So I'm going to show you another tool that's going to let us mirror our object so that we can see the handle on both sides without actually having to model it. So we're going to learn about modifiers, and up here at the top you can see on the modify panel there is a modify list, and you can click on the drop down. There's a whole ton of modifiers, most of which we won't use, but I do want to show you in this particular case symmetry. So we're going to scroll down until we can choose symmetry, click on symmetry, and by default the symmetry or the mirror point is actually going across the geometry like this, so it is mirroring this side and this side, which in our purpose, doesn't really do anything at all because it already looks like that. So we need to change which direction the mirror is going. So right now the mirror axis is set to X. We're actually going to hit it Y, okay? And this is actually the right direction we want. As you can see here, the line gets cut down the middle of the object now. In this position, but unfortunately it is mirroring this side and not the side that we want. In order to fix that, we'll actually just hit the little flip checkbox here, and there you go. You suddenly have two handles on both sides. Very, very simple. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to right click here and we're going to collapse on our object, or we can go over here and convert to editable poly just the same, both of which will actually collapse down the symmetry and kind of commit to this object that we have here. Now there was one step that I did forget, but this is not a big deal. Before we did our symmetry, is I can click on polygon mode, and we do have a little bit of a lift here on the handles, as you can see that I didn't do on this side. All right, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to select this polygon over here and this polygon on the other handle. We can move them both at the same time. It'll be just as good as if we did it beforehand. Okay, so while grabbing both of them, we're going to move them both up on the Z. Instead of using extrude, we're actually just going to move them, and this is kind of going to create that shape that I had before. Okay, and it looks pretty good. All right, and there we go. That is basically your shape, okay, your trophy shape. Now we can sit there and tweak it all day to make it look exactly the way we want it, but this is pretty good for what we need. But the last thing that we need to do, of course, in order to have a finished trophy is to create this bottom part of our object, okay, and the little stand for our trophy. So once again, we look at that shape, okay, and we go, what is the closest shape to this? Well, it should be fairly obvious. It's a box. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to our creation tab. We're going to click on box, okay, and we're going to draw out a box. Now you click and hold your mouse down, okay, let go of the mouse and draw the box up. Okay, we don't want it too high. All right, something like that should be fine. Okay, but you can see right here it's kind of thrown it out in no man's land. We need to center it on our object. Okay, so in order to center our objects together, we need to use what is known as the Align tool. Now in Max, I'm going to right click actually to get out of the box tool here. Okay, in Max, the Align tool is found up here. Okay, it's right next to the mirror and some of the other tools. But if we hover over any button in Max, it'll tell us what it is. In this case, it's the Align tool. Now what you want to do with the Align tool is you want to select the object you want to move, and then you want to select the object you want to move it to. So with the object selected, I'm going to click Align, and then I'm going to select this object to line it up with the object, and this dialog is going to pop up. Okay, and this is going to align the X, the Y, and the Z positions, as all of them are checked, with the pivot points of each object. So if our pivot points are kind of out here or something like that, it wouldn't work, but in this case, both of the objects do have pivot points in the center, so it works perfect. Okay, so we can move them in just one direction or three directions or two directions, whatever. In this case, we want all three, and we're just going to hit OK. Okay, but the last thing we need to do is actually move it down, okay, because in this case, our little trophy here, unfortunately, is getting inside the box. So we need to move the box down a little bit. We don't want any space, so just move it up until there's basically no space left, and that looks pretty good right there. It doesn't need to be perfect. All right, so in order to kind of create this little stair step effect that we need to do, we're actually going to go and convert this box. We're going to go back over to our modified panel. This is still just a box. All right, and then just in case so that our settings look right, we're actually going to put a length and a width of exactly the same thing here. Okay, so that we know it's exactly a box. I mean, it's not 100% important. It looks pretty close, but we'll just do it anyway. So I'm going to type in 28 here and 28, okay, to line up these two. So we know it's a perfect box. All right, looks pretty good, and obviously is centered on the object. So we need to convert this to an editable poly. So we'll right click on the object, convert to editable poly. And now we're going to go and grab the polygon and delete the bottom poly on the object. So I'm going to hit delete after selecting it, and you should see an open polygon here. Now this is where borders come into play. Okay, borders is one of the 5 elements subcomponent objects that Max has, and in this case, border allows us to select an open set of edges. Now, if we wanted to, we can go in with the Edge tool and grab these 4 bottom edges because we need them. All right, manually, but that's going to take a while. So we can just click on border and click on it, and it should grab all 4 of them automatically. Now, even though in case it's only 4 sides, it's not that big of a deal. But if, say, hey, we grab the bottom of this open cylinder here that's 18 sides, it would take a little bit longer to click on all 18 edges than it would to just grab the border. Okay, so now that we have the border selected, what we want to do is we're going to use this, okay, to create the rest of this shape here by using the move and the scale tool. Now, if we just scale and move, it's not going to do much. Say I grab the scale tool here and I scale it, it's just going to move this in and out. We need to start creating extra poly, so I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that. If, however, you hold down Shift, whenever you move, scale, rotate, and max, you will duplicate an object, or in this case, your subcomponent. In this case, obviously, border. So if we hold down Shift as we scale out, okay, and we want to make sure that we're scaling in all 3 directions, which is right in the middle here. So if we hold down Shift while we scale out, and I'm actually going to move my mouse up, you'll see a scale off. Now, if I move my mouse down, it'll scale in and look like nothing's happening. So move your mouse up, and you'll see that you will scale out a new set of polygons. So just scale it out just a little bit, and then let go of the mouse, let go of Shift. Okay, and now we're going to go grab the Move tool, okay, and we're going to hold Shift again, and we're going to move it down just in the Z-axis, okay, in order to kind of create this second part of our stair-step looking base. Okay, then we're going to let go of everything again. We're going to switch over to the scale tool. We're going to do it one more time. We're going to scale out in all 3 directions. Okay, just a little bit, holding down Shift, of course. And then we're going to let go of everything, grab the Move tool, hold down Shift again, and move it down one more time. Okay, and there we go. Now, if you want to kind of create this effect, okay, right here, if you undo a couple of steps, or just one step in this case, we can actually move this down first before we scale that down, okay, so that we have that little bit of an angle, little slope, okay, and then we can hold down Shift and close it off like this, okay. But finally, in order to kind of finish off our shape to make sure that we don't have nothingness on the bottom of our trophy, we are going to go over, and if we still have border selected, push the cap button on the side here. We'll push cap, and you'll see that it will close off the polygon, and we are technically done with the model. Now, once again, yes, it doesn't look exactly the same as this, and that's not necessarily relevant. It's just that it has that same feel. Now, I'm going to get out of border mode here. We want to make sure that we're not in a subcomponent in order to do this last step that we need to do, okay? So we just click on any of our subcomponent objects to get out of them. But as we can see here, our trophy looks a little faceted, okay? These edges are kind of hard. They don't look this smooth like this one does, okay? Now I'm actually going to delete this object, okay, over here. And we're just going to see our one object here. And so in order to fix this last part, okay, the part where we have our faceted edges, we're actually going to use another modifier, and we're going to use, in this case, the smooth modifier. So we're going to grab the drop down and go all the way down to smooth. Okay, now if I click off the object momentarily, you'll see that it actually facets the whole object, which is obviously not what we want. But like I said, by default, putting smooth will do that. So you have to check auto smooth. So it'll start smoothing the object, but it will still have some hard edges. Okay, so what we need to do is we grab the threshold here, which is by default 30, click on the arrow and keep moving it up until we see a little pop in the object. Okay, and we keep going until we get all the pop that we want. In this case, it's about as much as we need. I have it set to 66.8. If I click off of it, you'll see that it looks pretty much the way I want it to. Okay, however, we can kind of play around with these settings. If you go too far, it'll make everything soft, which doesn't necessarily make any sense, but you can go any direction that you want. Okay, but I'm going to move it back down, okay, so that this top part here has a hard edge. We're going to get back down a little bit. You see it pops back in, and then we still have that hard edge right there. I think it looks a little bit better that way. Okay, but once you're done, okay, we can convert this object back down to an editable poly, so we flatten the smooth down. Okay, and there you go. So we should have our two objects here, okay, the cylinder, which has been turned into a trophy shape, the box, which has been turned into a base shape. And these are the two elements that we're going to need in order to export out into Unity, but we're going to do that in the next video. So this concludes this video on how to use Max to model. Thanks for watching.